Hello, and thank you for joining us today. This is the third of a four-part webinar series titled SME Playbook, Thriving, Not Surviving. Previous episodes have touched on navigating trade and business sustainability, and today we'll be discussing investments. These conversations have been made possible by the Bayi Foundation and Ariel for Africa. Bayi Foundation is a non-profit organization established to build and support sustainable social and economic growth in underserved communities by supporting small businesses in the US and Africa. Ariel is a women led social enterprise with a heart for the African youth, passionate about creating employment. Ariel works with entrepreneurs in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa through strategic partnerships. You'll find more details about both organizations on their websites and socials. My name is Jaina Hamadafo, Program Director at BAI, and I'll be your moderator for today. I will be joined shortly by two gentlemen with a wealth of experience in sourcing and investing in businesses on the continent. It is common knowledge that capital or its lack thereof is a major pain point for businesses. Most entrepreneurs actually indicate lack of capital as being the biggest hindrance to their growth. The goal for today's conversation is for business owners to understand their options and know how to position themselves to find the capital that sees them. So we'll be talking on the topic, access the money. We'll love for you to contribute to the discussion via social media handles. The hashtags to use should be scrolling past your screens. There'll be a Q&A session towards the end. So please leave your questions in the chat and we will get to it. Okay, let's jump right into it. Hello, Jason. Hello, Abraham.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
great to be.
nice to see you. Hi, Jason.
Thank you for making the time to join us. Jason, would you like to go first with the introductions? Let's keep it short and sweet.
Sure. Yeah, great to be here. Jason Krause, the CEO and founder of Prepare for VC. And we teamed up with Ariel for Africa as well on a new initiative called The Bridge, where we're hoping to help entrepreneurs across the African ecosystem expand globally and, bring all the programs and resources we've developed here to local partners and be able to support more startups.
Thank you, Jason. You as well, Abraham, a brief introduction.
Okay, so passionate about SME financing, passionate about growing SME because for me, SME is the bedrock on which Africa can develop, and especially outside of the world. I'm currently with the Venture Capital Trust Fund as the investment manager. Thank you.
Thank you both for the introductions. You have done tremendous work supporting the ecosystem. So we'll just jump right into questions. With a decade plus of experience sourcing for external capital for your portfolios, what has been your experience accessing them? Is there even money at all? Abraham.
I don't know the answer Jason is going to say, but I always say that there's too much money out there. In fact, too much money ends up going back into ports because nobody's ready to access them. So if you ask me, yes, I hear people say access to funding is the biggest issue for SMEs. And I always say that, yes, that is true, but there's so much money out there. And that I'll be able to expand on further.
Okay. Jason, do you agree to what Abraham is saying?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, like I'm based in the US here in Boston, and I think, what I've seen in the positive trend has been there's been more of a global shift recently in terms of where investors here were mostly focused on like even what's in the US and what's even like within 4 or 5 hour driving distance of wherever they're located. And then the past couple years in particular, there's been more of a focus of like there's great entrepreneurs everywhere around the world. Let's find them, let's support their businesses, and let's invest in those companies. So it started with there's a lot of the startup ecosystems and communities that were either started here or were started in African regions, are coming together, working together, bringing investors, bringing partners, and bringing people to support those companies together. And, we're able to learn from each other, like learn, what's working well in different areas of the world and help each other, build great companies.
Sure. So what I hear is there is capital, but not enough investment into businesses to draw down on this capital that's available. So we are going to run through the various options that are available for a small business. Let's start with equity funding. Abraham, what equity funding options are available to small businesses? What are the pros and cons of using this option, and how do you get access to such capital as a business owner?
Okay, thank you. So, what equity funding options are available? There are angel investors out there. There are wealthy families that are ready to invest. There are venture capital companies out there. There are other institutions who will not typically identify themselves, but in the latter days, they say more like impact investments out there. These are businesses and institutions that will be willing to, because we are sticking to equity, will be willing to take up equity in a business and help the business grow. Now, the question is, depending on the size of the SME and the stage at which it is, equity may or may not be good. But we'll go into that, I'm sure, further down the line. What are the pros and cons? The first thing is that as a business owner, you must know that you are no more going to have 100% ownership of the business. And that is the first thing a lot of business owners either forget or refuse to admit. And so they bring in equity, and soon when there's the need to be accountable beyond themselves, they feel that it's a burden too much taking. And you must know that as an equity, or when you bring in equity, you are no more the sole owner, whether minority or not, somebody else owns the business. Another pro is that when you get the right kind of equity from the right institution, you are able to get access to technical assistance. They're able to bring on board long years of experience from their own background or with other institutions or other persons to try and improve on corporate governance. And that is needed to grow a business. Now, what are the cons? As I said, the con is that you lose ownership. You are not allowed to do things anyhow by yourself. And again, if you don't get the right kind, probably there's the risk of the business being taken from you. That risk is very real, and I'm sure along the way we can expand further on it. Thank you.
And so the last question was, how do you get access to such capital as a business owner?
The first thing is you must be ready. And just as the intro said, we both believe there's money out there. How to get access to is to be investment ready. When you are not ready, you will not think the money is there, because anywhere you go, you are going to be turned away because you will not be ready. You should be ready. And when you are ready, you then are able to fall into the network or fall on a set of networks which will link you to providers who are ready to take equity in your business.
All right. So later on in the conversation, we're going to talk about how to position your business to be attractive for such funding. So hold that thought, Abraham. We'll get back to that. Jason, do you want to do similar for debt as well? What's debt? What are the pros and cons, and how do you access that?
Yeah. I'll start with the second question on accessing it. So the way I like to phrase it is, when you're pitching to investors and equity investors in particular, you're presented, you have to have that story, like Abraham said, of your investment ready, and you're really presenting an opportunity rather than an ask for funding. So, you're getting investors excited about the same vision you have. You're getting investors excited about like where they can come in at what seems like a relatively low valuation today, because it can be super, it's going to have tremendous growth over the next 3, 4, 5 years from now. And even the next time you raise funding, they see you're going to achieve all these milestones in between, and it's going to be worth a lot more than it is today. And then, because of that, equity investors are really looking at the future potential of the business. For the most part, they're not getting any of the profits or revenues. There are some structures around that, but they're really getting a stake in whenever your company gets acquired, or whenever there's it goes on a stock market or goes to a private equity company. There's some other event in the future that all the equity holders, including the founders and the team members, are going to make a big return at that point in time. So it's on the pros and cons piece. It's important to find people that align with whatever your strategy as a founder is. Sometimes you want to build that fast growth company that's going to have, a high future valuation, and you're going to have some exit from the business. Other times you just want to build something that you can have a sustainable income stream. You can pay all of your employees and have, this as a business for the next 10 plus years, and, have something that you can pass on to your children and have them take over your business. So like, depending on your strategy and what you're really looking for, it's important to find the right type of investors that also match that and, share the same vision as you do.
Sounds good. Abraham, back to you. For the businesses you have invested in the past, what stood out to you? What was attractive about them, and how can a business position themselves to be attractive for external funding? Abraham, yes. You're muted if you're speaking.
Oh, my apologies. I muted. Okay, so if I look back on my portfolio businesses or investee businesses, one of the main things that still sticks with me is entrepreneur. Now it brings me back to one management question: to back the horse or the jockey. Is it the horse that wins, or is it the jockey that's good? And I must say, over time, I've changed my opinion, because in the past I thought it was the horse. Put anybody on the horse and you win. But over time, I've realized that the jockey or the business promoter or the entrepreneur or the owner is key to the success of a business, because we have serial entrepreneurs who have turned around dead situations and have succeeded, whilst there are very good businesses you give to other people and within a short time go away. So one thing that has stood with me is that over time I've seen that the entrepreneurs that improve themselves, either by learning or going back to school to go and get better, or willing to take on advice from VC players, because trust me, VC players are going to be, in quote, nosy, because they are just going to try and make you better than they met you. And that means that you must have somebody who is like a sponge, willing to take up as much water and get better or bigger. That is what stood out for me.
Thank you, Jason. Same with you. What
Yeah,
made
no,
that attractive?
yeah, I love what Abraham said. So we have I'm part of a fund here as well called EQX Fund, and our whole philosophy is that it's 100% the founders and the team members they bring in that are make the differentiation between the companies that are super successful and the ones that end up failing. And yeah, it's a lot of those characteristics. It's somebody that's they are, yes, they're an expert in their space and their industry, but they also know exactly who to bring in. They're looking for that feedback, not just, or they're looking for the feedback from investors, but they're also looking for, you don't have to know everything, and you need to know who the people to turn to are. Like, if it's the right time to bring in somebody on the financial side, if it's the right time to bring in somebody on the marketing side, understanding the strengths and weaknesses personally and of your team as you continue to grow. And I mean, there's going to be any startup out there, there's competition. There's going to be, whether it's directly competing with your platform or like just replacing the product and service with something else. And the thing that makes one company stand out versus the next is being able to spot those trends early on, being able to adapt to new markets, and just viewing problems and challenges as opportunities that you can go after, and you can bring them into your company. So you need a leader and a team behind it that can really be out there spotting what's going on first and being there to adapt and change the business as you grow.
Thank you. It's funny how none of you mentioned having an office space in US or a white co-founder as an attractive position, because that school of thought seems to be making the rounds a lot lately. So just in case you're in the audience and you have the same views, you heard it here. It's very possible to raise capital locally without a white co-founder. But let's hear from you. Put your contributions in the chat and use the hashtags Beyond Survival and SME Playbook. If you've had any challenges raising capital as well, you might want to share that in the chat and the panelists will get to it. Abraham, what's a typical investment process like? And when is it appropriate to start looking for external funding? Usually entrepreneurs will come to you and say they have an urgent need and have to raise capital in 3 months. Is that even realistic?
Okay, so thank you. I'll take the last question. When is it appropriate to start looking for external funding or external investment? The answer is now. Because the key to raising financing is being ready. And I have made a number of presentations, and I have always said that you go to a hospital and there is an emergency room. But I've never found an emergency room in a banking system or an investor company or a VC. You will never find an emergency room in any of the financial service providers, because finance is not sought in an emergency. Yes, there is bridge financing. There is something that we can do in the immediate term. But when you're looking for a business that will grow your business, there is nothing called emergency. And so I've always said that when you want to raise financing in the next 3 months, you should know that now. It shouldn't be when that 3rd month is upon you that as a businessman, you start going around saying that you are raising financing. I'll leave Jason to add more to that. But again, I want everybody to remember this. There is no emergency. That is why you never find an emergency room in any financial service provider, because there is none like that. You must know what you need. And going back, I'll answer the other question. Going back on what the process is, it depends on whether you're raising equity or you're raising debt. If you're raising debt, you must get, and both ways, you must have correct books. You must know which financing institution is appropriate for you at the stage at which you are. So if you're looking for equity, you can't go to a bank, because a bank won't give you equity. So first, you must know the kind of financing that you need, either equity, quasi-equity, or debt. And if you do, identify the institution that would help or will be rightly placed to provide that kind of financing for you. After you've done that, then based on the institution, you will know what their requirements are and ensure that you are ready with their requirement. Because so many times you meet entrepreneurs and they come and they ask you, so you want me to get my audited accounts together? What if I don't get the financing? And I always say then it means you are not ready. Because as I said, you must be ready. Your audited accounts must be one of the first things you are willing and able to present at the first ask. So the process will depend on which investor, which type of financing you are raising. And always remember that when you need it urgently, you will not find the right kind of financing for you in an emergency.
Right. Very important to know. Jason, same.
Yeah, no, I agree that right now is always the right time to fundraise. I think the limiting factor is, with any startup, depending on how many people you have involved, you have a limited amount of time, time, money, and resources to dedicate to it. But I think you should always be spending, allocate that whatever way you think is most effective, but spend that time early on building those relationships with investors, figuring out when you do raise how much capital you're going to be looking for and what it's going to be used for. So like, for example, if you say, I'm not in fundraising mode right now, but I want to be 6 months from now, you can at least dedicate a few hours a week to making connections with investors, talking with people asking more for advice at the beginning, and then turn those into people you can come back to and say, like, I'm ready to fundraise. This is everything we've done the last couple of months. Here's my presentation. Like, can we go over and review it and talk about the investment opportunity? So yeah, the earlier on you can do that, the better. And in terms of when specifically in the life cycle, I think there's always something, there should always be like some, a goal in mind of what you'd want at this stage to get from investors. And sometimes, say you don't want to fundraise, for example, you say it, I don't want to fundraise until my business is worth a $2 million company. Then you could say, like, if an investor came in today and they said it's worth that, we'll do an equity round and we'll bring them in. If they don't think it's worth that, we have these 5 or 6 steps we're going to do on our own and continue building up until we get to that point, and then go out and fundraise.
Sounds good. So what I usually, oh, there's a question. Let's take that. What about race and gender bias around fundraising? How do you overcome it? Who wants to take that question?
No, I have had the question of race and gender. Yes, others have pointed to some data, scientific or not, I can't speak to. But I believe that money or funding goes to where it will get the best returns. And so when you are raising funding and your proposition is solid, I do not want to believe an investor will turn you around and say that go away because you are white, or because you are black, or because you're Asian, or he has Hispanic, or whichever it is. I can understand the sentiment, especially when they point to certain data, but I have always held the opinion that locally there is enough resource here to finance all of us. And if your proposition is good enough, you should be able to raise the funding. Now, on how do I overcome it? If you thought that you were returned or you were turned away because you were white, then your management team must have a black person on it. You balance it. If you thought you were turned away because you were black, and you can, and I'm not saying everybody can easily get a white partner or a black partner, but if you thought that that was the reason why you were being turned away, then you work at solving your weakness, because first, you must know what your weaknesses are. And again, even though all banks give financing, each bank have what they will look out for. So when you go to bank A and they turn you down because they want a particular man with a height or a woman with a particular size, don't say you are being discriminated against, because when you go to bank B, they may not have the same height requirement, they may not have the same weight requirement. So I believe that going in first with a bias in the mind that, oh, I'm going to be turned away, takes away from you looking at your weaknesses and then solving them. And that is what I'll say to that particular question. Jason.
Yeah, I would say, the big problem I've seen is that there's there's closed net, or what have been built up as closed, like, networks and communities that still exist within the venture capital space. And I think, as the growth and the positive changes have been around sort of building and expanding that network. If you only host, or like, the trend in the past had always been, we get thousands or from an investor side, they get thousands of emails, introductions, pitch decks get sent their way. So, you needed a warm introduction or a referral to get a meeting with an investor. A lot, and that sort of led to a lot of the discrimination and, bias around gender and race, especially if a lot of the investment groups, were either like white male investors or other, other specific groups of investors. And I think what we're seeing and hoping more of the trends continue on is opening up the community in some way, either through partnerships or just having more of a process that lets anyone, great founders in the door, and you're able to see the best entrepreneurs whoever they are, wherever they come from, and invest in those companies. We're seeing great founders from every background possible, um, and yeah, it's being able to give those leaders an opportunity, because it starts at the early stage. If you're prevented from getting pre-seed funding, you're never going to be at the stage where you can get Series A funding, and the later stage investors have to also push like the conversation and the community building side to opening up the doors for the earlier stage investors and vice versa.
Thank you, Jason and Abraham. What I'll have to say to that is you have to be very strategic and intentional about fundraising. And most entrepreneurs approach it as an afterthought. If you know your business will need growth capital a year or two down the line, now would be a good time to start looking. You need to do your homework and seek out investors that suit your location, your industry, your developmental stage, market size, race, gender, if you don't want to add that. And you can determine this by looking at the investments they've made in the past and identify a synergy. Like pitching your business to just any investor is a complete waste of your time and theirs as well. So do your homework before you approach any investor. If they have previously not invested in a female founder or in a black founder, then you have no business pitching to them. So that's what I'll say on that. And I hope we did answer your question. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, I'll just ask mine. Okay, question 2. I just need to raise $50,000. What are my options?
I don't know what the person is raising 50,000 to do. So the options are really on my side, limited, because if you tell me you need $50,000, what are you raising it for? What stage of business are you?
Okay, so the person asked the question,
Yes.
please give us, put a little more flesh to the question.
Exactly.
What industry, what stage is your business? Is this a startup? Is this growth capital? I mean, just put a bit of flesh to the question so that you can get appropriate response from the panelists. Question 3, what about bootstrapping? Is that a good option? Jason, do you want to take
happy
that?
to start. Sure. Yeah, so I think it's all like, even funded companies most of the time start with bootstrapping. Sometimes it's your whole life cycle. You continue to bootstrap and build the company without raising, or at least without raising equity funding. Other times, you get it to a certain point where then you can say what you've proven out to investors and raise an equity round. But it's always best, the more you can prove out, the more you can showcase before you get outside investors. And that starts with bootstrapping, figuring out basically, and the traction side that goes along with this. It can be it's great to have revenues and profits in the business, but it can also start with having top partnerships, top companies, a few big logos on your customer list on board that you can show to anybody else that gets them excited. There'll be people that want to come, and even on the client and user side, there's a small group of people that want to try new products as soon as they come out. There's more users that want to try something once there's positive reviews and feedback and a client base already, and that pool keeps expanding. So the more you can bring on the early side of it, the more you can get to that next user base and audience, and also have that proof to show any investors you want to bring on from there.
Thank you, Jason. Do you want to chime in on this, Abraham?
No, I think I will support what Jason has said fully. Yes.
Okay. Any more questions? Or then, right. So to just backtrack on having audited accounts and having like a business plan, is that what's enough to raise funding? We tend to see people come with fancy pitch decks that have been prepared by some specialists. and hockey stick projections to show how they're going to do great if you put money into their business. Is that what's enough? They neglect the governance side of the business. They neglect the team side, even the market research to back some of these things. So let's talk more about that. Aside the business plan, aside the audited account, what else do people need to get ready to before they approach an investor?
Okay, so I'll say that for me as a person, governance is key and governance is paramount. You can present the best books. So let me give an example. So if right now any of us went to our friend who owned a business, and then as the owner, as the MD, as the promoter, and whilst we were in his office, his child or his friend or his brother or sister, whichever relation just came in and said that, oh, I'm going out and I want to go and buy a Gucci bag or something. Can I get $2,000? And the person just pulls out of the drawer. And then there's not enough. So calls, accountant, how much money sales have we made today? Oh, can I get 2,000? You give it to him. And you're sitting in front of your friend. And then you see that scenario and you go back. A week later, that friend comes to you and comes to ask you, I need 10,000 to expand my business. And you have that $10,000 in your pocket. The question straight to you is, would you invest in that business?
Obviously not.
And most of us, almost everybody will say no. But the same scenario, you went and the person said, oh, personally, I just have $50 in my account and my pocket. The business account is not mine. Can you wait end of month when I'm paid? I would be able to give you something towards purchasing that. A week down the line, such a person comes to you and says that I'm looking for 100,000 to expand, knowing very well along the way in your speech that that day he made sales of $5,000. You will be willing to put in money. You will not at that point look at any book. You would have looked at the fact that when you put in money, you know that the money is going to be well spent or well used, and that for me is very important. So the audited account is good, the pitch deck, and then you mentioned a pitch deck from a specialist. And many times you pick a pitch deck and you ask the entrepreneur or the promoter, whoever has brought it to you, a question based on the pitch deck, they don't have any idea.
Right.
And some of them are open to tell you that, oh, they just wrote it for me and I don't even know what they put in it. That kind of business, again, as I said, is not ready or is not willing to be ready. And so governance is good, but we can't discount proper books. We can't discount a recording of transactions, and the rest thereon. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. That was spot on. Jason, did you want to chime in?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great example there. Yeah, I guess the piece I'd add is there's like two phases from the fundraising side, from the investor's point of view. The first phase is convincing investors it's exciting enough to dig into and really looking at all the positive sides of the business. And then, so that would be having that exciting pitch deck, being able to showcase where the opportunity is, having other examples from the business plan and the business model built in that back up how this is going to be a successful business. And then the second phase is more of the due diligence process, where it's looking for the red flags and the areas of concern that would make you not want to invest in it. So that's where not understanding like the financial aspects of the company, or having issues with on the cap table where maybe a co-founder left and still owns 25% of the company, or other red flags there that investors are looking for that need to be taken care of and managed before you go out and before you're investor ready.
Thank you, Jason. So I think the question came back for 150,000. If we could have that on the screen, the person added more context. Okay, I just need to raise $50,000. What are my options? Seed investment, but we have good revenues. We just need a small capital injection.
Jesse, would you take it or should I? Jesse, go.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, one piece is and yeah, in terms of the options, like I'd say mostly, or you're probably looking at angel investors and individual investors for this, but there's also, depending on what you are a little bit like, depending on the company itself too, maybe you have an invoice or a contract lined up, and there's something you can use to then go to banks and get some bank financing around this as well. There's a lot of options out there. I'd say one piece is figuring out who you can, if you have revenues and which it says it does, and there's more of a financial statement and history behind it. There's obviously more options like bank financing and debt financing that open up as well. But in terms of what you need to spend it on, I'd say think about that aspect first. And if it's hiring somebody specifically, or if it's getting a piece of equipment or machinery for manufacturing of a product, you'll be looking at both an investment into your company to be able to spend it that way, and also maybe there's a leasing contract, or maybe there's something else you can do instead that'll help finance that specific area you're spending the capital on. Maybe you can get somebody on board as a equity member for a few months before you pay them a full salary, or just really figuring out first what it's used for, and then what the options are to get that in place. And and then the last piece I'd say too is sometimes it's easy. It's just as hard or difficult to raise 2 or 3 times an amount as it is to raise that same amount. You might have to talk with the same number of investors to raise $100,000 or $150,000 as $50,000, and it's figuring out who those investors are, and if it makes more sense just to raise a larger amount now and not have to go out and fundraise 6-10 months from now.
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
So
Abraham.
my question is, who said he needed 50,000 or she needed 50,000? Why not 100,000? Why not 150,000? Why not 200,000? Why not 20,000? Again, the second question is, this 50,000, assuming it has been proven scientifically, can it be taken in stages? Do you need all of it now, or do you need it in bits? As Jason said, do you have a contract lined up? Is that contract, is it the contract that's demanding the 50,000? You need to employ somebody who is key to the growth of your business, for which reason you need the 50,000. And so the 50,000, the salary for the next 6 months, or what more information? I'll be willing to engage the person, or I would like to engage the person to get further details. But I think that saying that, let me read the question. I just need to raise 50,000. What are my options? Seed investment, but we have good revenues. Great. We just need a small capital injection, 50,000. And yes, some investors will not do 50,000 to you, because for them that's too much. So you must again know who you are going to. You must know what their appetite are. You must know what we are willing is. Yes, 50,000 may not be a lot of money. I agree, but you must show cost and need before you can raise the financing. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. Thank you, Jason. Do we have any more questions? Then I can go back to mine. Okay. So let's talk about the typical process. So using this 50,000 example, so she came to you, probably it's a manufacturing business or an agro-processing business. What would they be required to present? What's the process they will go through from the time they come to you till they close the investments? Let's just walk through what a typical investment process is like. Jason?
Sure. Yeah, happy to start. So typically, there's some materials they send, or either it's an introduction, or or just an outreach where they've sent something, in a format that makes it really stand out and get the investors, excited about everything they're doing, want to jump on an introductory call and meeting and learn more. Then, that meeting goes well and the conversation moves forward, probably reviewing several other deals at the same time. And as you go through that process, that's still an exciting company. That's one of the top ones you're thinking about a week later. So you dive into more of the, you might jump on another call, bring a couple partners in, depending on if it's a fund or an individual investor, and then really dive into what's called the due diligence process, which would be, digging into more of the financials, the customer base, or yeah, in your example, it was a manufacturing company. So, who else is involved in their supply chain? What are the other, like, maybe even doing some calls with the other partners and clients of theirs, and really just vetting out and checking all the boxes you can. Depends on the stage. Some companies, there's a lot more like detail you go into, just because they're further along and you can get that information. Others, it's really getting in at the ground floor, and you're learning more about the people itself, the company, the founders, talking with the other advisors they have, and just getting a feel for exactly who's involved, getting to know the founders really well, and getting excited about everything they can do over over the short and long term. And the goal of when you're choosing an investment is you want to, the hardest question I'd say to answer for on the founder side is why invest right now. So you've gone through that first phase and it's an exciting company, but then it's first off, why invest in this company over the other 5 or 6 deals I'm looking at? And second off, how is the company going to grow large enough that it doesn't make sense to wait until the next financing round to get in? It makes you have that fear of missing out on not getting in today. And if a founder can showcase that and really has the full story together, then moves directly towards an investment. And depending on the size of the round, it might be a direct investment, or it might be you say, I'm going to allocate this, and once there's enough other investors that fill out the round, we'll all invest together on the same terms.
Thank you, Jason. Abraham, what's a typical process like if I came to venture capital trust fund looking for $50,000 for my manufacturing business? What would I
Okay,
have?
so what I would want to say is that it depends on whether you're raising debt or equity. The person must, or whoever it is raising finance, must know that if you're raising debt, it's shorter. When you're raising equity, it's longer. So if you're raising debt, typically they will want to look at, assuming you're raising from a debt financier, they want to see your transaction. And the person said they have good revenues, but good revenues for how long? So there must be, the cash flow projections must show how long that good revenue, because when I give you debt, I'm going to be sure that within that period where your good revenues last, I'm able to pay myself back. If you are going to do equity, you may have losses or you may show losses, but the person would look at the growth potential of the business beyond. And that include valuation of the business, that will include looking at the team. The equity people will double check the team as against debt financier typically.
Yeah.
They'll look at looking at the team, which component or department of the company that money is going. If it's going to production, who is the production manager, who makes sure that there is quality control at the end of the production process, and those other stuff. So typically if you came to venture capital, we would look at the team. The team is very important. And then the cost, what you need it for, and the growth potential for the industry. So for example, the new thing, because we are in COVID, everybody's manufacturing hand sanitizers and stuff. So there's a lot of growth potential for it. But if tomorrow World Health Organization comes and says that COVID is projected to end in September because 90% of the world is vaccinated for whatever reason, and you come to me and you are looking for financing and you are going to manufacture hand sanitizers for the next 3 years, then typically you're out of luck because I'm not going to go beyond it. So the factors on the ground, the industry you are in, and the team that is backing you will be key. But typically, remember, short term is debt and long term can go as much as 6 months before you are able to raise the financing.
Sure. Thank you for that. So, final question. Do you see the need for more investor readiness programs? Because you will usually get a lot of entrepreneurs come to you for funding and they have no idea what the process is. They have no idea what requirements are. By the time they see the DD checklist, they are overwhelmed and frustrated because they feel like, how didn't I know this? Do you see the need for more such programs? Jason?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. So I think it depends on, yeah, I mean, it depends on, it's really understanding what you know and what you don't know as an entrepreneur. And there's one of the things we always go over at Prepare for VC is like, there's the known knowns, so the things you know really well in your company, the things you're able to present to whoever it is, an investor, a partner, customer. There's the what you call the known unknowns, where you know that you're going to need to bring in your CTO, you're going to need to bring in a financial advisor, or go through another program to learn it. And then there's what you call the unknown, the unknown areas where it really takes just going through other investor readiness programs, or accelerators, incubators, to understand that these are even questions investors are going to ask, and these are areas you need to figure out in your business from the operational point of view. So yeah, I'll depending on if this is a first time you've launched a company, or your fifth startup, or if it's your expertise in the particular industry and on the business side, there's a lot of great programs and resources, and definitely worthwhile seeking the ones that are going to support you the best.
Right. Thank you. And Abraham, do you see the need for more investor readiness programs? Do you encourage these entrepreneurs to sign on to such programs?
101% if there's anything like that. I see the need for more of such, because as I said in my intro, I think there's more money out there than people are ready to take. And when you are not ready, you would think that there is no money out there. But I would caveat that by saying that I have met a lot of entrepreneurs who have been caught in the spirit of pitching. So I've met them in pitch one, they were there. Accelerator one program, they were there. You meet them the next week and they are in another program. You see them on Zoom and they are in South Africa for another pitching. So my question to some of them is, are you running a business or you are pitching? And I don't have a problem with your job duty as a business partner is raising financing and pitching. Then that's fine. But when you take their CVs or they send you an email, they are the CEO or they are the managing directors or they are the production directors of the companies. And so I asked myself, for the last 3 weeks or for the last 3 months, I can count how many times you probably have been in the office.
Right.
And I've met you all over the place pitching. Yes, the reason why probably nobody's putting money in is because nobody thinks that you're going to sit down to do the work.
Right.
So whilst it is important to do it, you should be sure you are not caught in that cycle, because you must devote a lot of leg time to make sure the work itself is doing well, is growing. But you should learn to be ready, because readiness is key to raising financing either now or in the future. Anyone that comes in must know that the team, and just as Jason said, the known unknowns. I mean, I find it amazing when entrepreneurs come and they don't know their figures of hand. I'm not expecting to the last dot, but I expect you to have, what was your sales in the last 2 years? If you are coming and you don't know it and you're bringing your financial officer with you who knows it, that is fine. But they won't come. And then when you ask them, they are, hold on, let me make a call to my financial. I don't have a lot of time to spend for you to make a call for the person to either answer or not answer, and then you give me the information, and then I ask a follow-up, and you have to call the quality manager. No. You must be ready. And you must be ready, as they say, the elevator pitch is because when you meet an investor in an elevator, between floor 1 and floor 10, you should be able to sell your business to the investor, said that when he or she goes to sit behind his desk, that business will ring 2 weeks down the line and it's like, no, I met that guy. I was with him for 30 or her for 30 seconds. No, please, can you raise it? I want to spend further 10 minutes and understand it further. And that can only be done when you're ready. So yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all time will allow us. The conversation doesn't end here. Use the hashtags Beyond Survival and SME Playbook so the team can follow your conversations as well. There's also a reward for the most engagement. Jason, any final words? What's that one thing that you want entrepreneurs to go home with? And how can attendees reach you if they want to reach out?
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, the one thing I'd want to leave everyone with is, it's all about building that story, building the pieces in place that get everybody else excited about what you're working on, and building those relationships as early as possible. So yeah, I'm happy to connect with anybody that took the time to listen here today. They can check, they can find our contact at prepare4vc.com with the number 4 in the middle. And there's also a link on there to our community page. That's free to join and network with other founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and partners in there too. So yeah, we happy to add any value to all the companies that took time to listen today.
Thank you, Jason. Abraham, final words?
What I'll say is that everyone should be ready as an investor, as a business promoter, as a business owner. You must be ready. You must be willing to take on an investment and know when you need it. But most importantly, know the business side of your business. Do not just know the technical. And most promoters are interested in how they were able to manufacture a product, design a product. But as an investor, my question is, what is the business in there for me? And the business is the profit generating capacity of the business to pay me and pay yourself. So know the business side of your business.
Thank you so much, Abraham and Jason, for this very needed conversation. Wasn't sure an hour would be enough to cover the topic, but you dropped a lot of gems, and I believe you have provided spot-on information to help entrepreneurs find the capital they need to scale their business and thrive. The last episode in this series comes off on Saturday, 8 a.m. GMT, 9 a.m. WAT, 11 a.m. EAT. As we close out the series, we will hear from our very own entrepreneurs and alumni on where they are going next and the tools or changes they are putting in place as a result of the conversations we have had over the last 3 episodes. Thank you all so much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.